Hey, Bomb Squad, Dan here. Have you been thinking about starting a podcast, but you don't know where to begin? Are you completely clueless? Are you completely lost? If so, you're in luck because I have the solution for you. It's Anchor by Spotify, the easiest way to make a podcast with everything you need all in one place. Anchor has the tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. When hosting on Anchor, you can distribute your podcast on listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. And best of all, Anchor is totally free. We use it, and you should too. So download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm and start your podcast today. And the check bounces. That's what's coming up on the Art of Bombing, episode 255.
My friend Dan, he's got a podcast, 'cause all comics need a podcast, and nobody had a podcast called The Art of Bombing. So Dan went out and bought a tape deck. Who knows why he bought a tape deck? Podcasts don't get played on tape decks, but Dan is from the 80s. So hey there, all you funny jerks, come talk to Dan about your work. Tell him all about your worst times. It's The Art of Bombing.
Welcome to an all-new Art of Bombing. I am your host, Dan Bublitz Jr., as it is my podcast. Welcome to the show. With me, as always, is my co-host, co-producer, and cohort, Josh Shirley. How are you, Josh?
Dude, doing well.
That's
my kid's
great.
birthday is tomorrow.
Your birthday's tomorrow. Happy?
No, my kid's birthday.
Oh, your kid's birthday. I just heard birthday.
Yeah, went straight to me. Yeah,
I did.
My...
I was like, birthday must be you. That's why you're bringing it up.
Of course. Yeah, why else, you know? Yeah, his birthday is tomorrow. He's going to be 10. I don't know how I feel about having a 10-year-old.
Yeah, they grow up fast, huh?
I got to change a lot of jokes now. I'm like, dude, slow down so the joke that I wrote can still work.
Just wait till he gets older and really starts changing.
I know, man.
You know,
I feel like I only have a few years left, maybe less than that, of like walking past his room and hearing like the swish of lightsabers and the crash of starships.
Well, if you get lucky, and you really push the nerd on him, that will never leave. And that's coming from a 44-year-old nerd that has no problem swishing around lightsabers.
That's true. And you have some, like, you guys can't see this on the show, but Dan totally has action figures behind him. So
yeah.
You're right. You're right. I should have considered who I was talking to.
Exactly. The studio over here on the Front Range, it's a twofold situation. It is the studio, and it is also the collection of nerdy things. I am surrounded by comic books, graphic novels, action figures, other toys, and comic books. So.
And that's because your partner will not allow that stuff to be in any other part of the house.
That is pretty much it. A few hints here and there are allowed throughout the house, but not a lot. Most everything has to be contained into these four walls.
Well, what do you got going on, buddy? What's coming up for you?
I had a really interesting weekend, actually. Before I get into what I got coming up, because I know you had a show this last weekend, and based on the pictures, it looked like a really good show. It looked like it rocked. So congratulations on that. That's huge. But yeah. I decided to do something a little different this last weekend, and I went to a northern Colorado podcast meetup. Put on by some podcasters in the area, and they brought in some national podcast people, and it was kind of like a cool little get together where they had a couple speakers talk about podcasting and some marketing ideas and talk about some big podcasting network events that were coming up, and I met some other local podcasters in the area, and that was kind of a cool thing. I learned some stuff. One of the things I learned is about titling a podcast, And if you're listening to this podcast, you probably noticed the title's been expanded just a little bit. It's now The Art of Bombing, a podcast about comedy.
Yes.
Because one of the things they mentioned was making sure that people know what your podcast is based on the title.
Nice.
And when you think Art of Bombing, if you're a comedian, you automatically, okay, that's probably comedy. But if you're not a comedian and you see The Art of Bombing, you're probably not thinking it's a comedy podcast. So we'll see if the title change, if what I learned at that meetup and put into practice actually works out on our behalf.
That's right. Well, one other way, and Dan's voyage out to the podcast meetup only means good things for you guys listening. So I can definitely assure you of that. But what you can do to support the podcast is to invite your friends to it.
That's right.
Put it up on groups that you're a part of as a suggestion for, man, did I learn some stuff about comedy on this? Or joining the Facebook group if you haven't done that already and interacting with all the cool stuff we got.
Yeah, and I'd also be if you interact on the Facebook group, if you join the Facebook group, and one of the action items, I guess, this week is something I've been kicking around, is the idea of creating an Art of Bombing Discord server, because a lot of people use Discord now. And, I've also been thinking about a subreddit for the podcast. I'm not as familiar with those two items. I mean, I know what Discord is because I've used it for some gaming and stuff, but I would be curious to see what you, the fans of the show, would think about that, if that would be something you would be interested in being part of. If we had a Discord server where you could go and chat with other people about bombing, whether it be, vocally or through the messaging services, things like that. But a good way, like Josh said, you go to our Facebook group and tell us if you'd be interested in that. That'd be huge. Let us know. We want to make this podcast better. We're always striving to make this podcast better and for you. So, and in order to do that, we need your feedback.
Yeah, very nice. Well, on Saturday, Bryce Stanley and I were at the illustrious Hazel's in St. Joe. This time, had a nice crowd there. They were into comedy a little bit more. Hazel's can be a tough room, It's not a place where the laughs come easy. But I did 30 on top of the show. That include hosting duties. So I had a few things on my list, on my checklist, like we've learned on this podcast. You got to focus on your goals. My goals were to, use the material to bring myself out, not the other way around, to work on some hosting mechanics, just making sure that the crowd was drawn in and making sure that the host was, or the headliner was properly introduced. But also, for the most part, like, together, he and I, we had 90 minutes. We put these three people
so it was just you and him.
That's right.
You didn't do, because when I was there, it was you, me, and a feature, and then you also had a guest
That's
person.
Right.
So
I have to limit the number of times at Hazel's that I go up and do longer sets because they've kind of seen my stuff a lot. So it had been a while.
You're getting a returning audience, which is a good problem to have.
Indeed. So several people who came back to this show had been there during your show, were complimentary about that show, and had stuck around to see more comedy. And,
that's fantastic.
Yeah. People have been pretty consistent there. But it's, we definitely get a lot of new people every time as well. But still, it had been, when I did the show with you on it, it had been less time. And now it had been another couple of months. So I was able to, write some new stuff, but also kind of elongate some things that I hadn't done there since the time before that. So I was able to get some new things in front of people, which is another goal.
Nice. Well, that's great. That's good to hear. I'm glad the show went well and people were there to laugh and people came back. Definitely a good sign. Speaking of good signs, it's a good sign that we have a good guest today. There we go. That was a terrible sign. I tried to do something there, and that, my friends, is the art of bombing. I tried to make a really cool transition.
Segue. Yeah.
Yes.
You know, but while we're here, I'll just say, guys, it's time to talk about safety.
It is. You gotta be safe when you're doing comedy. That's you're absolutely right on that. And what we're talking about is here, especially lately, excuse me, as politics have been getting more heated and people have their own personal views and, their own, political views or whatever it may be, ethical views, things like that. You can get yourself into some sticky situations. And that's something we talked about with our guest, who we didn't mention, was Jack Freeman, comic who used to live in Dallas, now lives in New York, again, from the Plano Comedy Festival. That's where we recorded this. But we talk about that because he tells a story about a show that he did where one of the comics was really pushing the boundaries, and that was the only material they wanted to do, which is fine, but it wasn't the area wasn't necessarily good for it, and that can happen a lot. I mean, I've definitely been in situations where I was kind of like, I don't know if I should tell these jokes because I don't want to, I want to leave in one piece and without bruises.
Yeah. The question becomes how, we don't want to limit ourselves. We don't want, comedy is an expression of free speech, and it's a free country and all those things. And, you got to be yourself and do your material. But on the flip side, all right, do I have material? Do I have jokes that I can bust out at different times that are appropriate for the audience that I'm in front of? Can I pivot if I need to? And how far am I really taking it if I'm not reading the room?
Yeah, and reading the room is very important. And I think, and in the conversation, not to, a lot of spoilers or anything, but Jack and I talked about that, where he plain out said there's areas that he's just not going to go anymore. He doesn't need to go do comedy in those areas. And I think that's a good point. If your comedy doesn't necessarily vibe with a particular area, especially, when you live in the Midwest like we do, or the Southwest, it's political, certain areas are more red than others. And if you push those bounds, it can be, it can become an unsafe situation. But that doesn't mean you have to go push them bounds. You can just not go do those shows. You find your own audience and go perform for the people who are going to appreciate you, not the people that are going to threaten you. And you don't want to jeopardize your safety.
That's right. That's the main point before we get into the episode is you be you, do your stuff, but keep an eye on the surrounding area. Just keep your own safety in mind above all other things.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's super important because, if the internet showed us anything, there's a lot of that kind of stuff going on with comics, and we want all our comedy comrades to go home safe and in one piece, so yeah, definitely be safe and, don't get yourself into some crazy situations. I think we're about ready to get into this conversation, but before we do, I do want to do one quick little announcement as well. Should have did this up top, but I forgot. But on the Patreon, we should have the assets from the How to Produce Your Own Show. If you watched that 3-part series, we should have the asset should be up within a week. We're just finalizing the checklist and the email template, but that should be up within a week. So if you aren't already on Patreon, you can go join Patreon now. It's patreon.com/artofbombingpod, and you'll be able to get those downloadable assets that include some checklists for producing your own show, be an email template, and then within probably a month, it'll probably be before that, but I want to give us some time. We'll also be putting the 4th part of that series, and that's going to be a Patreon exclusive. So just a couple things I wanted to let people know that we got coming up. We haven't forgot, so it's coming.
Yeah, that's definitely been worked on. We have all the, like Dan said, all the assets, but we've also written that episode. We're just trying to find a time for us to get together, drop that on there. But yeah, join that. And what, Dan? We have just a couple more spots of the
for the elite. Yeah, you can get in on our. We only have 2 tiers on our Patreon. We have the elite, which is the best one you can get, and it's a bargain because it's only $3.50 a month, and that's limited. We only have 5 spots, and I think there's only 3 available. And then we just have the regular Art of Bombing Bomb Squad tier that is it's $7 a month, so it's twice as much. And so you don't get, it's pretty equal, but not quite. You're getting a little more. There's a couple little extra perks with that premium or the premier, the $3.50, and that's what's great about it. It's cheaper. So, and once they're taken, they're taken. So I get over there before they're gone. And then I think that's all we got. Let's get in this conversation with Jack. I think, are you ready?
I'm ready. I'm Jack Freeman. I'm ready.
All right, let's do it. Here is our conversation with Jack Freeman. Enjoy. Hey, Bomb Squad, Dan here, and I wanted to let you know that we've completely overhauled the Art of Bombing Patreon page. We've made some changes, improvements, and added some cool new perks that we think you'll enjoy, such as early access to new episodes. They're going to be ad-free, host-free. They get right to the conversation. Another cool perk that we've added are re-released episodes. That's right, every week we're re-releasing a new old episode of the podcast. Right now on the Patreon feed, you can get episodes 1 through 9, and every week we're going to be re-releasing a new old episode. Another cool perk that we're going to be providing are resources, comedy resources such as email templates, checklists, and all kinds of fun stuff that are going to be coming from the Between Bombs series. We're going to be doing monthly and quarterly Q&As and hangs, so you're not going to want to miss out. Go to our Patreon page, subscribe now. It's patreon.com/artofbombingpod and sign up right now.
And now it's time for the stand-up soundbite.
It's good to be here, man. I suffer from depression. Any depression sufferers here? Depression. That was not a depression sound, but okay. Ruling for depression. I've never seen like a Xanax commercial, woman at the window like, woo! I was diagnosed with depression back in high school. It was cool to be a depressed high schooler back in 2010. It was cool. Because as a depressed teenager, I got a 20% discount at Hot Topic. So it was a good deal. Yeah! Some people don't know what Hot Topic is now. That's crazy, right? Like if you don't know what Hot Topic is, just think of it as like the devil's Claire's. If you don't know what Claire's is Disney Channel Victoria's Secret. And if you don't know what Victoria's Secret is, it's an honor to have former Vice President Mike Pence in the room. Welcome. This is...
It's the art of bombing.
There we go. This is great. I'm excited because this is the last one that I'm doing.
Oh, hell yeah.
This weekend, anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did one Thursday and I did 3 yesterday.
Oh, for real?
Yeah, and then I'm
Yeah.
doing this one. So
Okay, yeah.
I like to. When I go to these festivals, I like to get a bank.
Yeah.
When I can, I'm like, oh, there's
of course.
comics from all across the country.
Yeah.
I mean, I can still get them because I record remotely too. But it's like they're all here. Let's do it in person.
Yeah, it's way more fun in person.
It is. There's something real fun about getting strangers to come to my hotel room to record.
Any stranger interaction in a hotel room is bound to be good.
Right?
Something's gonna
Exactly.
happen.
That's funny. Well,
Yeah.
yesterday I actually recorded down in the lobby because my roommate was my weekend roommate was in here, so I was like, I don't want to bother him. I'll go do this downstairs.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, it was a good time recording. A lot of great talent here. We're at the Plano Comedy Festival. You had a show last night. How was your show last night?
It was great. It was the 7:00 show at the Plano House of Comedy. The headliner was Mike E. Winfield.
Yep,
who's just a knockout. I've seen him. I've seen his act a little bit. I mean, he was on America's Got Talent this year. So
yeah, blowing up
kind
a
of
lot.
He really got a lot of folks from that. Like at one point, he mentioned America's Got Talent during his act, and like half the room applauded. So he drew, I think, from that. I didn't realize that he would draw from that.
And what's amazing about that is at least for the comedy festival, is that they had him booked last year.
Yeah.
So this whole festival was supposed to take place in 2021.
Yeah.
And then the Omicron variant had caused spiking here, and they made the difficult decision to postpone it.
Right.
And they reached out to all the comics that were already booked, you know, and they're like, hey, we're going to postpone this.
you guys want to do it next year?
Yeah.
And which is great.
Yeah.
Good on them for doing that. They could have just been like, well, we're just going to reopen submissions and do it all over. But they didn't. And everybody was like, yeah, cool, let's do it next year. Even the major headliners. And then he, in that time from being booked last year, already being a good comedian, but being booked from last year, blew up in the middle, and now he's selling out so that's amazing for the comedy festival.
It was like they bought Mike E. Winfield Scott stocks when when he was like at half value.
That is a great analogy.
And now he's just out. Yeah, he was great, man. He was really bonkers. The room was, by the time that he got up, it was kind of up and down through the show a little bit. But by the time he had a nice runway into his set with some comics who did pretty well back to back, and then, man, he just went up there and you can just tell the LA guys, because LA guys are just they have the physicality, they have the act outs, they have the voices, they have the performance stuff that elsewhere in the country you don't get. I'm in New York, so it's just it's totally
it's just stand up. I get that.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying. It's more with LA comics are more like performance based, like you said, doing the act outs and characters. And New York is like traditional standing up, literally, not doing a lot of moving.
Yeah,
stuff like that.
And there are comics who of course that don't fit either of those molds, that live in those places. But Mike is just he really brought it performance wise. He brought a confidence in the pacing and everything that you just get from the real guys who are touring a lot, who are touring bigger rooms, so they know how to get the people more, they know how to work a crowd in the all the way to the back of the room.
Well, it's interesting because I went to the early show just to hang out for a little bit, and when I was sitting in the bar talking to some other comics, and this couple came in, and then we started talking, and they were there for his show. They were there for Mikey's show, and they actually met him on a cruise. He performed at a cruise. And then, I think that was even before AGT.
Sure.
But then they're from Houston.
Sure.
And they came up for a business trip, and they just extended it a couple days so they could go see him. And that was because they saw him on a cruise ship. Incredible. And then they followed him online or whatever, and they've been big fans of his. But I thought that was really amazing. I was like, wow, that's awesome.
It's the dream. I mean, imagine that's the best case scenario of being a cruise ship comedian, is that maybe you don't remember much about the cruise because who knows what's going on the cruise, but
right,
when you were on the cruise, you were sober enough to follow him on Instagram or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like 5 years ago, and now now they're continued draw.
And
Houston's pretty far, so for them to change their travel plans just for that is
they just were like, well, we're going to be in Dallas, so let's just add a couple days or add a day so we can go to the show.
I get it,
which is awesome. So so they were at your show. I didn't, because then I was at the early show, and then I had to go over to the other venue because I wanted to see some people that some friends were on another show. Sure. That's only my only complaint about this festival, is that they have so many shows, which is good, but also a pain because you have to pick and choose which shows you go to, and I'm like, I want to go to them all.
Yeah, for real. I want
to see everybody.
I wanted to see everybody. All of the headliners this year are so good. I was hosting the kickoff show 7:00 on Thursday, and at the same time, Ralph Barbosa was his show was at the other venue at the same time, and Ralph he's a Dallas guy, and he's blowing up. He's huge
that's
right
what I was talking to Tom about that yesterday.
He's just
he told me about that show and how that he's blown up, and
huge.
People were just lined up to meet him and take pictures with him after the show.
And he's really every single Dallas comic you talk to, I'm sure Tom said the same, is everyone's like, yeah, he should be huge because he's really great. He's always been great. He's always been fantastic and everything. And to see him blow up like this, where he's selling out. I mean, they had to put up. He did a pop-up show this weekend that sold out within an hour. He did another. Wow. He was put on as a headliner at DCC, Dallas Comedy Club, down in Dallas, sold out. So he's just as far as this market goes, you can find a hotter comedian, and he deserves it because he's just
that's amazing.
So anyway, I was hosting that show at 7:00, and I was just thinking man, I'm honored to be hosting the show, but I would really rather be on another show, Yeah. So anyway, Yeah, so like all the headliners, this has really been a huge festival. We were just talking off mic about how before COVID, it's just crazy how festivals, when the people who run them, and you as a festival runner yourself, if like the people who like if you're competent and you put up good shows, every single show is decent at least. Like you can't help but to draw. Like pretty consistently over the course of years.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You build an audience for the festival.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah, and that's great. And even another great thing about that, not just drawing audiences, is one thing I found being here. I've been passing out cards for our festival to other comics, and they'll grab it. Oh, you're involved in Snow Jam, and they know they've heard about it, and I'm like, well, that makes me feel good that people are. They've heard good things, and people are, and I've heard, and it's the same thing. I've heard the same thing about Plano Comedy Festival too. Right. So it's good to have that reputation, not just with being able to put on good shows for audiences, but that comics want to be involved in too. Because we all know there's a lot of festivals and a lot of things in comedy that are pretty skeevy. Like where you realize when you're applying to some of these festivals, you're like, am I a source of revenue for this festival? Well, and you are. I mean, really, for most festivals, you are. I mean, that's
right.
But a lot of times, you're a source of revenue with a very low bottom, or not a low bottom line, but a low investment on their part because they're not paying you.
Right.
So they're getting a great return on investment.
Well, I'm just saying from is my submission, do they purely view my submission as a form, you know what I mean? Like as a form of revenue? Because it's
I got you.
You know what I mean? I've also gone to festivals
right.
where I was not, where the comics were like, if you were not a comedian with standing, you were not treated particularly well, or like the organization was bad.
Yeah, I got you. I see what you were saying there though, but as a revenue avenue, the submission fees. Yeah, I think there are some festivals that are like that too, where that's part of it, which is sad. I know, but I get having submission fees because one thing, it weeds out people who get mad about submission fees, but it also weeds out comics that probably aren't ready for festivals either.
Sure, yeah. If they're not budgeting for like just like parts like that is a part of your comedian budget. Or no,
absolutely it is. It actually is. You're not wrong on that. It should be part of your the money that you're going to invest in your business, because really we're all small businesses,
right?
And part of it takes money to make money. They say that's that old saying or whatever. But part of that is doing things like you said, going to comedy festivals and networking, building your brand, meeting other comics, things like that. So it's all definitely part of it.
Yeah, exactly.
But I like I said, the festivals, like with our festival, we the submissions are definitely a form of revenue, but it's revenue that gets put back into putting on the festival, because when all the selected performers, we provide lodging. So it's like, well, yeah, you can complain about paying a $20 fee to get into our festival, but if you get in, we're covering your lodging. You're going to save $300, $400. So, so there's definitely pros and cons to it for sure.
Yeah.
But I suppose like coming back home for you, this is a great one since you said you're from here.
Yeah. Right. I started here a while back, and so it's easy for the locals, of course, and then for me, I can come back and visit family. I can do some other things and double up. So it's the same whenever I work a club here. It's that I just have like the built it, like cost wise, it's pretty great, and then obviously I can see family or whatever whatever that means. So
one thing I've noticed with this festival that was kind of amazing to me is that there are a lot of comedians from out of town. Mm-hmm. Here at this festival that are actually from this area. Yeah. I can think. Well, you're the fifth one I know for sure.
Oh, for real?
For that is not living here currently, but is from this area. Sure. I don't know if any ties to comedy, but they are from here. Like Dwayne White, he did the podcast earlier this week. He lives in D.C.
Sure.
Originally from Plano, the area.
Yeah.
Another comic from Seattle, Robert Moore, same thing. Ties to from here. And there you. Who was the other one? There was a couple other ones, and I was just like, well, that's amazing.
Sure. Yeah, well, the Dallas Fort Worth comedy scene is huge. It's one of the larger. It's probably comparable to like Atlanta or something. It's a pretty big scene, tons of clubs, so that you can get a lot of stage time, ton of mics. So there's a really thriving scene here, and before COVID, it was pretty wild. But because it's Texas, COVID really didn't affect the comedy scene.
Same with like South Dakota.
South Dakota is probably the same. It's like by late May of 2020, the governor was like, we should reopen, and everyone's like, hell yeah, and then
let's do it.
Shot some guns in the air and then licked doorknobs together. So it was like there's so many clubs here. I think that's probably the big one of the bigger things that influence the that in the number of working comedians is that there's just a ton of stage time.
Yeah. Well, and I know that's definitely everything being open. That's what helped Austin blow up. I mean, Austin already had a good comedy scene, but that's a lot of comics migrated to Austin during the during
because
COVID.
they were escaping the what they viewed as like fascist ideology in California, where California was like, hey, maybe we should just chill a little bit longer. Wait to reopen.
Yep, and that's what I mean. Yeah. I'm talking about Texas was like, we're going to reopen, and comics were like, all right, we're coming.
So Texas did great, Florida did great in terms of like reopening and comedy and stuff like that. In other ways, they did not do great, but that's okay. We don't need to talk about that.
This ain't a political podcast. There's plenty of political commentary out there.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, so Dallas really thrived, I think, during that time. I have a lot of friends who were here, who were working during that time. They got a lot better during that time. At times when other comedians around the country couldn't work because of wherever they were. So I think that really helps a lot. And then so that also means that you have a lot of great comics who move to New York, LA, of course, but then also just go to other markets to try to get.
And like you, for instance, you moved to New York. That's where you said you're at now. Yeah. How has that been for you? The transition from going from a scene like this where there's a lot of stage time, and probably even though there's a lot of comics, it's probably easier to get stage time than a place like New York.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, New York is like New York. So I moved last year. I moved summer of 2021, and man, New York is the life that everyone wants in New York. That the reason why everyone moves to New York is to have like the Jerry Seinfeld comedian documentary experience where you're just going or show to show. You have spots 3 or 4 spots every night. The Mark Norman model, you could say, where you just have 4 or 5 club spots every night. And then you go out on the weekends to do the road, and that's the life, and that's very possible. You just have to, you just have to eat shit for a while. You have to.
You got to start at the bottom and work your way, finally hopefully float to the top.
Honestly, you just have to be there for a while. You basically have to restart when you go to New York.
Well, I feel like you have to restart anytime you move to a different scene.
Absolutely.
I think. I mean, I know that's just at least been my experience, because I've moved to a couple different scenes myself, and it's like every time I move, it's like kind of starting over. Like you still have a few contacts, but it does feel very much like starting over.
But I think the difference with New York, and part of the reason why I was cool moving when I did, was because when I moved, I wasn't getting any club work in Dallas. And I was working at Backdoor, which is a fantastic club, but that's more of a showcase format. So I wasn't doing any club work in terms of the 3-man shows at the main clubs. So I thought to myself, there's a lot of the advice about moving to New York or LA or one of those bigger markets is to wait until you're a bigger fish in the pond, where you're starting to max out your opportunities.
Yep.
And I thought to myself, I'm feeling pretty good about my progress. I'm getting a little bit more road work, and if I'm gonna restart anyway, no matter where I am, I might as well just go to New York now, restart from my already relatively low position on the pole. And then advance from there. And to be honest, that's been the case with everyone. If you could be a feature with credits on the road, and you go to New York and people don't really care. It's more about your connections. If you know anyone who can put you on a show. But in terms of club work, clubs don't care who you are. You have to you can get spots from here and there, but to get club work in the city, it's grinding, and it's
you got to be paying your dues, if you will.
Paying your dues.
Yep.
Because there like every the many open micers in New York are openers on the road, and they're that good, Obviously, there are a lot of terrible open micers there.
Well,
and I would say actually in New York, like, if you ever go do open mics in New York, like something that will strike you is like, oh yeah, like this is like the best city in the world for comedy. There's also a lot of shitty comedy here, so I wonder what's up with that. But that's
everywhere. That's everywhere. I've been around enough to know that that's everywhere. You're going to have good comedy, but also there's going to be a lot of terrible comedy.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially at the open mic level and the open mics and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's just
it comes with the territory.
It really does. The difference, though, I would say with New York and LA is that it's actually a lot harder to do open mics there. In part, like there are a ton of open mics, but there's no audience. So the audience is because comics.
Yeah.
So it's hard. It's actually hard to work on material there. It's hard to to do stuff if you're not getting consistent spots. So
now that you've been there for a little over a year, are you getting more consistent spots, or is it still?
Yeah, here and there, it's hard to crack the code.
Yeah,
and like every club there has like a different process to get in. To get through the door. Like some of them have bringers that are audition bringers.
Yeah,
so like, that's fine. Because at least it's like straightforward. But a lot of clubs are like our referral. A lot of clubs are like so to get club work, it's kind of tough. I'm starting to get more spots on shows, but just by produced shows, just by being a consistent person.
Yeah,
around,
being seen, which is good.
But ironically enough, or not ironically, I guess it makes sense. It's way easier to get road work than it is to get shows in New York. Like it's easier for me to get a weekend in Wisconsin than it is to get one spot in New York. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and I suppose too, because that's just like the allure. It's funny how that works too, because like you have like all these great scenes throughout the country, and even in like in middle America, and there's still that illusion. And there are great comics there. Don't get me wrong, but there's that illusion. Oh, New York comedy, New York comic. Oh yeah, we better get them into our
right.
That's impressive. That's fancy.
It's a credit. It turns into
a little. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like a little credit.
Like, I changed my EPK to say like Jack Freeman is a Dallas-based, was a New York-based comedian, and like that does make a difference.
Yep.
It shouldn't, but it does. So if you're just trying to get like spots on shows, you could just hit up a showrunner. If you're in Boise for something, you just hit up a showrunner. Then say, "Hey, I'm a New York comedian. Can you put me up?" And they were like, "Oh, yeah."
Yeah, you're not wrong on that. That's pretty close, pretty accurate on that. Yeah. And it's something that's kind of funny to me, but I get it, because I mean, obviously with comedy, New York is like, to me, at least to me, I know LA's got a lot of great comedy. There's more, to me, traditional and like good stand-up comes out of New York, in the sense that that's where people go for like just to do stand-up.
Yeah.
LA people are going there because they're hoping to either get a writing job or they want to get into acting.
Right.
All the thing, and comedy is just like a way to that.
Right.
So it's not like they're still dedicating time to it, but they're not like, this is what I want to do. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like they're not trying to be Jerry Seinfeld. Right. I'm going to go sell out all these, theaters and do comedy.
Right. Yeah. They don't. Yeah. Like you're absolutely right. They have like the order of operations is reversed in a way.
Yep.
Yeah. Like, yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, you see it in New York when you talk to an LA comic who's in town. They're almost always a writer on a show. And then they're just in town when they're off from work, basically, so they can come and do spots and stuff. Yeah, it's pretty bonkers, but it's also just like the allure for me, at least, was being able to consistently hit open mics without having to drive 2 hours, which was the experience in Dallas. Was that Dallas is just huge. So to do 2 or 3 spots a night, which you can do at open mics, you have to drive 2 or 3 hours to do it, and depending on where you live. So that was pretty. So
that's insane.
So I was like, if I'm gonna be doing that, I might as well sit on a train and do that instead.
Yeah, because then you can, while you're moving back and forth to mics, when you're on the train, you can like write or listen to sets and prepare.
Just chill. If you're okay with being yelled at by strangers, then New York is a very relaxing comedy environment. If you're okay with sitting on if you can power nap on the train while being yelled at by someone, then you
perfect for New York.
You are perfect for New York in terms of
That's amazing. Well, let's start talking. I want to hear your story about a time where you had a bad show or where you felt like you bombed.
All right. So I did comedy in Dallas for 3 years before I moved, and I did a ton of one-nighters in East Texas. And East Texas, if you guys, if I guess people might not know if you're not from Texas, East Texas is like the South. It's like real Southern energy. And so I was doing one-nighters here and there. And I was doing a one-nighter where I was hosting like a showcase at this bar in East Texas. And the guy who ran the show was a Dallas comedian who I think moved to like Southern California, and he came back and he did. Do you know these types of comics who like they go away and then they come back and then they book a bunch of shows so that they can headline like in the area and then just like draw like free work from other comedians, like, hey, can you come host for me? You can't get paid, but like you'll get stage time, like that type of thing.
Yep.
So he did that, and I was the idiot who was like, yeah, I can host for you. And so I went out to this biker bar in East Texas, and you already know, like that. What the vibe is.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So it's this biker bar in East Texas. It was a showcase. I knew some of the other comics on the showcase, and then he was going to headline, and everyone was doing 10 minutes. There were a ton of comedians on the show. Everyone was doing 10 minutes. So it was already going to be a long show. And then he did an hour at the end of the show. So the show itself ended up being about 2.5 hours long. For a bar show is ridiculous.
That's insane.
Like no matter the venue, actually. That's just too long. So I was hosting the show, and very predictably, I went up. There was no music, no introduction. I just went up onto this fake stage that was basically just a raised thing of plywood that they put up on some
cinder blocks. Oh,
literal cinder blocks. It was. I felt like I was making I was at like a country fair, a county fair, and I was going to make an announcement. Like that type of vibe.
Hey, can I get everybody's attention?
Right,
they're about to start the cow milking contest.
Calm down now. We got the raffle coming up, and then So I go up, and I'm not a very Texas person. You could probably tell by my energy. I'm a very thin-wristed person. If you get my drift. I'm not.
Are you originally from here though?
I'm originally from Kansas. Oh, okay.
Actually. Okay. Well,
yeah. So take that
similar,
for what you will. Fill in the blank about whatever that means. I'm not a Texas guy. I'm just not a Texas guy. So I go up on stage. I'm trying to do a little bit of crowd, trying to get people to pay attention. Nobody's really, people talking, doing the whole thing. And so then I just started doing my act, and I talk about in my act, I'm just a sensitive boy in my act. I go to therapy. I'm just not, and at this point I'd been doing comedy for maybe 2 years, so I didn't really know how to change the act to adjust for people. I didn't really know how to I just knew how to do my act. I couldn't do crowd. I couldn't really do anything. So I was just doing my act and people were kind of listening, and I just realized about midway through the 15 minutes that I was supposed to do to start the show, I just realized not only am I bombing now, I'm going to bomb for the next 2.5 hours because I'm going to have to keep going up. That's the worst bomb in the world, when you realize that you're eating shit in a showcase format as a host, and then you're just going to keep reminding people of how much they don't like you for every 10 minutes for the next 2.5 hours.
Yep. That's a good observation on that, because you're absolutely right. When you're when you bomb as the host, it's the worst because you have to keep going back up there, and especially if they don't like you,
if they really don't like you, if
you're just rubbing it in their face,
if you represent the Bernie Sanders energy. And you're in good old boy East Texas biker bar energy. You just represent the beta in a room full of supposedly alphas. So I'm just eating it at this point. And I also the more you host, the more you're okay with eating it, because as the host, your job isn't necessarily to do well, right? It's just to set up the show for success. So I just kept thinking all right, I just got to bring energy. I just got to keep even if they're not laughing, just be energetic, just be capture attention, right? So near the end of my set, I'm just eating shit. To this point, it seems like a pretty normal bomb. It just seems like, all right, this sucks, but this is basically an open mic. I'm just gonna act like this is an open mic.
Yeah, well, and I mean, realistically, when a comic does that, where they have they're headlining, but they have like a bazillion openers, do 10 minutes each, right. It's really just a glorified open mic.
And none of us are getting paid.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's just a glorified open mic.
It was. It really was like, and like it was to the place where they like the DJ or whatever for this place, like they had someone up in the booth and they tried to play me off, like, and they turned up the music during my set, like about maybe 10 minutes into my 15-minute set, they turned on Aerosmith. They were playing an Aerosmith song like during my set. I was like, hey, no, I got a little bit, I'm gonna do a little bit more, and then they're like, oh, and I could hear a guy go, what did he say? And then like I could hear someone go, he's gonna do a little more, and then and so they turned down the music. It was like
wow.
So again, like I've eaten shit plenty of times in East Texas. I know like what's the vibe. So a little bit later, another comic was up on stage, and she's a comic from Austin, and she's really funny, but she's doing Trump jokes like in this bar. Not a great choice, right?
Yeah.
Like I understand like the kind of like the comic like energy of like fuck you, I'm gonna do my act, like
yeah,
like, it's
but
like,
also that's a way to create an unsafe environment when you push it, like, and I get like right there with you. I understand. Right. I'm the comic, I'm gonna do what I want, but you also got to be like, you got to pick your battles. she could not pick her battles to save her life. She really was like she had a nose ring. She's an Austin, like she was wearing sandals. She was a real Austin person. And you can tell Austin. You can tell you can't really say this about Austin anymore. But like the Austin of old used to be very like like the real progressive, like the real like whatever. And like in a lot of those comics, like they might not want to change, what they're gonna do on the road, right? So she's doing her Texas material. Nothing. Nobody's laughing. Very uncomfortable. I go up on after her to try to pick up the room, try to bring up the next comic. So then the headliner goes up, he eats shit. Really awkward for an hour. It was like to the place where like the comics were just in the back talking because we're like, we don't know this guy, like we have no whatever. He mentions midway through his set that his this is the most cringe moment, that his high school English teacher was there to go to see him do comedy for the first time, and he said on stage and during his act that this is the English teacher who told him to become a comedian. And so the person who inspired him to become a stand-up comedian came to this biker bar in the middle of East Texas to watch him eat shit in front of 30 very annoyed, grumpy men. And like that was the moment where I realized, all right, something special is going on. Oh,
this isn't just a bomb. This is
karma.
Something's happening.
This is the universe setting things right.
We are part of a plan.
Yep. Yeah. That's when you're like, I did bomb and had to go face these people every time, but I was just part of a plan for the universe to set something right. I was just playing my part.
This like very full of like very egotistical guy who thought he could just like set himself up to dunk and like to to do well for an hour is eating shit. So that was fantastic. That made the night a lot better, to be honest. Was to see that. So then at the end of the night, the real kicker is that we were sitting at the bar. And we were waiting, and he actually told us that we would get paid which we didn't know. So he was going to pay us because the bar was going to give him money, and then he said that he was going to give us money. So we were like, "This is great," like we got to see him, with his tail between his legs, for an hour, and now he has to pay us for the honor, and so while we were sitting at the bar, this guy comes up to the Austin comic, she was sitting with me at the bar, and he asked her to talk to her, and so she turns to him. And then he talks to her and he says, the real East Texas guy, kind of skinny, scraggly beard, real, something's going on with him. And he says to her, hey, listen, I wouldn't tell those jokes around here if I were you. And she goes, oh, well, those are just the jokes I do everywhere. I don't really do anything different. And then he said, yeah, well, see, the Klu Klux Klan is real prevalent around here. I think you should maybe mind yourself. And she goes, oh, yeah? Where are they? And he goes, they actually meet just up the road. And I can actually take you there if you want. They're just up the road and to the right. And she goes, and I'm at this point, I'm like leaning over at the bar, like, how do they feel about sensitive boys? And because like I'm like, and I was also like very much like an energy, like I was already thinking like, all right, if we get confronted, I'm not with her. Just like,
you're like, yeah, we just met. I'm not.
She's like, we're all feminists here. I'm not. Chivalry's dead. I'm not protecting her. This is you. Like, I'm like, look. So she goes, oh, okay. No, I think we're gonna leave. And then he goes, I think that's a good idea. And so we get our money and we walk out. And as we walk out, there's a group of bikers who are standing next to their bikes, and they're all sitting on their bikes. And I drove a Hyundai Elantra at the time, a tiny foreign-made car, and they were they were sitting around my car, and so I was like, hey guys, can I? And I tried to like put on an accent. I was like, hey y'all, can I please get to my car? Like, I was trying to like blend in, even though like I was wearing a V-neck. And so so again,
wearing one of those sensitive boy sweaters.
I might as well have been wearing like a puka shell necklace or something. I couldn't have looked more out of place and everything. And then the kicker is we drove back to Fort Worth from there, and like we were she like we went to this club and we were hanging out afterwards, and everything was fine, like we were safe and everything. A week later, I try to cash the check. The check bounces. There you go. The check bounces for almost getting murdered by the KKK in East Texas. The check bounces. I messaged the dude on Facebook. He doesn't reply. He left me on red. I've done online dating enough to be okay with being left on red, but I was like, dude, I almost got lynched because you wanted to eat shit in front of your English teacher. Please.
Wow. And the check bounced. How much was the check?
$25.
$25 and it bounced.
I guess it was more of a symbolic thing.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, $25. Like, come on. Wow.
Yeah, it was.
That's sad.
Oh man, it was great. So I think it was that night, and I had been hosting. I've been hosting in East Texas, in these rooms in East Texas. Have you ever done like a Roadhouse like type environment?
Oh yeah, I mean, I performed for bikers and biker club. I wasn't at their club, but I ran into some bikers in a show outside of Chicago, and they were like the only ones in the audience. And then I ended up going with them to another bar and then to their clubhouse.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was a wild night.
And now you are a son of anarchy.
Well, maybe. Yeah, I mean, I got. They're all like in my phone.
Are you for real?
No, this is a for real story. Yeah, and they all had crazy nicknames. It was pretty neat.
And the next time you're disrespected, you know who to turn to.
Right, just gotta call my friends in the old motorcycle club.
call Hoover and Spike and.
No, it was interesting because we took a picture together, and they're like, "You can't put this on social media," and they're very adamant about it. Like, you can't put this on social media.
Yeah, they were.
And I was like, "That's fine. This is more just for me."
Yeah, for the next 2 months, don't go through any toll booths with your driver's license because with your plate. So anyway, I'd eaten shit so much in East Texas before. I'd done roadhouses. I'd done like these like weird club like dance hall type of clubs where like the room is huge. It's like a ballroom type of thing, but it's like these like kind of like southern areas where like. It's not like a ball. It's not fancy. It's like it's East Texas vibe, and and it's like a huge room, and the dance, and it's like a dance hall, so that like the dance floor, nobody's sitting on the dance floor. Everyone's sitting in the chairs and stuff around the dance hall.
Yeah,
and you just have to. Like,
so you just have like this 100, like it feels like a football field of space between you and your audience.
Yeah, and it's like, and oftentimes we'll be like some families will be there because like it's Friday night. This is their night out with the fam, and like they don't have a Chili's to go to, so this is the next best thing. And and you're just trying to do your act, and I think it was those types of shows that made me realize, like, yeah, I'm more of a Brooklyn comedian.
I need to get out of Texas.
Yeah, I just some road dogs, tell you, like, yeah, you has to be able to work in Cleveland on a Thursday night or something, like that type of thing. Yeah. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to be that type of comedian. I don't know if I think maybe my act needs to work in Cleveland on a Thursday night, but I don't think it needs to work in what was it, Enid, Texas on a Tuesday night. I think
yeah, right, exactly.
Somewhere between those two things.
Yeah,
is where
there's an audience for everybody, and it doesn't. I mean, as comedians, we want to try to have our material so it can appease most audiences, but like I said, most, not all, because you're just not always going to be the comic for every person,
right,
or every audience. Where like they're just, and there is an audience for even the comics that do like cringy material. There's an audience for that.
Absolutely.
People who do the cleanest comedy, there's an audience for that.
Absolutely.
Everything in between, like that. But it's a matter of finding your own.
Right.
I think we're all as comedians trying to do that, where we're trying to find our audience, so that we can, have our own fan base, and then you don't need to worry about that.
About maybe getting
murdered. Yeah, exactly.
Murdered in the woods in East Texas. Yeah. I can say, like, after those years in Texas and now doing the road more, being in New York, being in many different spaces, I can start to check off the places where I know I don't need to go.
You're like some comics have like a bucket list of places they want to go.
Yeah.
You have a bucket list of places you're going to avoid.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like that. Honestly, for real, it's like I don't think I need to do a lot of places in Staten Island now, because I understand that, like, oh yeah, no, I've done East Texas, so I think I can avoid Staten Island as a place, like that type of, yeah.
Yeah, well, and that's not bad to know, like, places to avoid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing wrong with knowing places that just aren't going to be a fan of your comedy. I mean, and there's nothing wrong with that. And that's, again, you go to your audience. If your audience isn't in those places, there's no point in trying to go, win them over.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's helpful to do every once in a while. I think, like, that was maybe the lesson from that time as well, was that I was doing a lot of those one-nighters, going up to Oklahoma, doing East Texas, a little bit of, like, down center Texas, down Austin, like those areas, and it's helpful to do every once in a while, because it's good to stretch those muscles. It's good to try to, like, it's just good to be in a situation where you gotta do more crowd. Maybe you gotta maybe just, like,
work all the tools.
Yeah, work all the tools. Like, try to, like, maybe not do material, but, like, do some crowd, and just try to, like, be do, like, more of a rowdy act, and, like, just, like, try to have fun with, like, the, like, in like, there were some bar shows in Dallas that were, that were kind of similar to that biker bar energy, but, like, like, maybe not exactly that, but where like I learned over time, and by the time that I left Dallas, I learned how to work those rooms, and also pepper in the material, choose the material that works, moving it in and out of the material into crowd and stuff like that.
Being able to kind of switch it up if you need to,
and manage a room, like that's that's the type of stuff that is really good to learn. But yeah, I just learned that yeah, I did it. I don't need to keep doing it. And maybe I should maybe I should try to move to a market where there are more of, like, these sensitive, annoying boy energy rooms that I am.
You're like, what scene has the most emo audiences?
It's Bushwick, Brooklyn, if you're unfamiliar.
That's awesome. Now, when you have a bad set, what do you try to do? How do you try to analyze your sets? Even a good set, but how do you try to analyze your sets to improve your jokes and improve, performance?
Yeah. I mean, like, that's the work, right? Like, that's actually what it is to be a stand-up, because anyone can go up and do well on one set, and anyone can go up and eat shit on a set. It's actually how you, like, take the lessons, right? So, like, it's just like probably a lot of the comics who have been talk about, it's recording. You have to record your set. There's really no way around that. I don't.
Well, and you should watch and or listen. I talk about that all the time, but also I don't do it. So
yeah, but that's
I'm just as guilty as the next person.
But I also think like no, I hear you, because like I mean, if you're doing at the same time, if you know that you're doing like your club act that you've done forever, you didn't do any new material, then like you don't, right.
But I do record everything though. Yeah. Like at the very least, I do audio, but I try to do video on everything now.
Absolutely.
So,
and that's something that was a huge, like that was probably the biggest shift it's in part it's working on material, it's listening to the set to hear how new material did. If something really cracked, then like actually writing down the word choice, because like that type of thing, just doing like the Goldman tips basically, just if you don't know Gary Goldman's Twitter tips, just do those tips. Yeah, because like it really does work. But I think the distinction maybe is that I'm almost more focused on performance and trying to be more in control of my performance when I'm on stage. I even after all these years, I still rush. If I'm not focused, I still walk over laughs. I still move. I still do kind of like rookie mistakes. Like not giving some jokes that are more thinkers room to breathe, room for people to think about stuff. And the part of that is just muscle memory, and that I maybe had bad habits when I started, in nervous habits. So now when I'm listening to sets, and like especially if I eat shit, I think it's more important to hear, did I fumble over something? Did I was I rushing? Did I not give people like room to think? Like, I mean, it's just so many bits are like hinge on making sure that you say one or two words.
Yep.
If you miss those words, then
mess it all up.
The bit's done, and maybe the bits after those are dead.
Yep, absolutely. Well, first I'll ask this: like, when you tell a joke and it doesn't land, or you feel like you're starting to lose an audience in that moment, what goes through your mind, and how do you try to pivot?
That's the work, right? Because even in a set where you're killing it, where you're really wrecking it, you can mess something up. Someone can yell, someone can throw you off your rhythm. You use the warm, you just like miss a word, and that can mess it up. So yeah, I think like for me, it's kind of just I really tried to maintain confidence in the material. So if something doesn't work, which I mean actually happened last night. Like I was having a pretty good set. I messed up some language in a bit, and it really fell apart. Really dropped off. And in that moment, like I think maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I would have freaked out. I would have like, like on like the like, guys, don't you like me? Like that type, or like I would have been like mad at them. I'd be like, well, fuck you guys. You don't know comedy. Like that type of energy. But now, I guess like now after doing like really, it's just doing the road so much that you just realize like, yeah, just keep doing the material. Like really, just trust the material like that works. Because also like if you lose them and you do an A joke after that also doesn't do well, then whatever, like you're fine. Like it really is like, all right, I messed up there. I can learn from that. I can try to get back the audience, but don't try to don't lose confidence, and don't lose control over yourself, because the audience can sense that immediately.
No, absolutely. What's your writing process like? How long do you work on a joke before you decide it's either going to go into the act or it's not worth pursuing anymore?
For me, I've always been paper to stage, so I've always.
So you physically write everything, or
out.
Type? I mean, either way, but
I actually write it out first.
Oh, but you physically write it out too.
I physically write it out first.
Handwrite,
not
physically. I mean, both are physically writing. Well, whether you're typing or writing, that's both physical. Yeah, physical.
Whatever. I put my body on the page. I write with. I put a little bit of. I got my nipple really hard, and I dip it in some ink.
And you're just over there. You're like, this is how you train to do comedy.
Someone walks into the room. Someone sees me in the corner of the coffee shop. They're like, "That guy's physically writing right now." I write on the page usually. A huge difference now is that I think Louis said it or someone said it, like that the difficulty with like writing and then taking writing to the stage is that it doesn't sound like a conversation. It has to be conversational. So I think a big difference for me now is that while I'm writing, I'm talking out loud, and I guess like I have an idea, but I'm talking to myself and I'm trying to like say it how I will say it on stage, and then take that and put it on the page, as opposed to like, you know, just like basically like a poem, like writing it out or something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, you know, this is something I just thought about when you said you say it out loud as you're writing it or whatever. It just made me think that, you know, because I do that too sometimes, like, and I think all comics probably do. But when we're out in public and we just randomly start talking to ourselves, I'm sure a lot of people think we're nuts.
Absolutely. My partner,
they're like, why is that weirdo in the corner talking to himself?
My partner, I'll be in the shower and I'll be doing my acting in the shower, or I'll be talking something out in the shower, and she'll hear me from the other room and she'll go, "Are you talking to me?"
That's
I'll
funny.
go, "No, I was doing the act," and she goes, "Oh, okay, that's not weird."
Yeah,
and like, you know, but like, you know, little did she know that she was interrupting my process.
That's funny. That's funny because I've done that too. But for me, like sometimes I don't even realize. Like I'll be thinking about, you know, because I'm a run my set through my head, and I'll be thinking about it, and then suddenly, and I won't even talk, but suddenly I'll mouth. Yeah. I won't make any sounds, but I'll start mouthing to what I'm thinking and not even realize I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And then my partner will be like, did you say something? Are you talking? Like, why are you, what's going on? And I'm like,
whispering incantations to yourself?
Yeah. I'm not even whispering. My mouth is just moving. She's like, what are you doing? And I'll do this, like, this will happen like when we're in public. Too.
Absolutely. That's actually, so I still wear my mask on the train in the city, and part of the reason is obviously for COVID, but part of the reason is that when I'm thinking about my act on the train, I'll be mouthing it to myself on the train.
You're like, I don't want people to see my mouth just moving.
And granted, that's not going to be the weirdest thing they would see on the train that day, but I don't want to contribute.
You don't want to be part of that weird day on the train.
Yeah. I don't want to be someone else's bit, is what I don't know who are comedians on the train. I don't know. I don't want a comedian to be like, yeah, I saw this guy the other day. He was just mouthing to himself on the train and he looked really sad.
And then you can go up after him and be like, so the other day I was on a train.
Just mouthing myself.
And apparently I looked very sad.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. So and then in terms of like how long it takes to take things from conception, I guess, to the act, I like it really is. It's so case by case because you know, if I'm really in a good, if I hit something good, then it goes in the act pretty much immediately, but I'll just make sure to make sure that it's just the good part. Right, because so many new bits have something really great in them, but then it's just covered in fat. So, like, oftentimes when we're excited to do it, we just forget to do it in the club act. We forget to just cut off the fat first, and then to build out from the lean goodness. So that's what I just tried to do. But I mean, I've like since moving to New York, I've probably added, not too much time, but that's in part just because. I've really had to raise my standards for what goes in the club act because, you know, you'll be on shows with Gary Goldman. Like,
you got high. It feels like higher stakes.
Eagle Wit. So many shows have stellar comedians working on them or people who are really fantastic. Mm-hmm. So like you just have to like. I just feel like. For me, I'm not in the place where I can work out material on shows. I want to bring it when I'm on a show.
Well, absolutely, so. And that's another good reason to move or to be in an area like that where there's other great comics because work, especially like, and even in your local scenes for people listening, you know, working. You know, a lot of times comics will be like, "Oh, they're really good. I don't want to be around them. They're too good," or whatever. You know, like you'll get that ego like. It's like a weird thing, but the mindset should be, oh, they're really good. I want to hang out with them. I want to do comedy 100%. With them because when you're working with people who are good, it 100%. Drives you to be good, and that's exactly like what you're saying. Being in 100%. New York, instead of working on material and screwing around, you're like, well, these guys are really good. I need to step up my game, Absolutely. And now I'm working on my best. It brings the best out of you. when you're working with other people who are really good.
It really should. And I think I mean, along those lines, something that Linda Stogner, who we were just talking about, who's a Dallas comedian, who's
hopefully future guest of the podcast, hopefully, who's one of who's I mentioned before, she's one of the Mount Rushmore of Dallas comedy. She's really she's a club owner. She's done everything. But she gave me advice when I was working at her club, which is that which just sticks with me is, and I wish more comedians everywhere would listen to this, is if you're on a show, just do a material. Don't try to do material on shows that is lower probability shots. Especially if you're an open micer who's getting some spots here and there. Oh yeah, absolutely. Those
times are I'm more so talking to the
newer
comics.
Yeah.
Is when that's not the place to try out the stuff that you're not sure about.
That's as a show producer myself, that's one of the things that one of my biggest pet peeves, I think, with comics, newer comics, when you give them a chance and then instead of you've seen them do well enough to where oh, I want to put them on my show.
Yeah.
Then they come to your show and they're like, well, this is a good opportunity to treat it like an open mic and do all new material. And it's no, don't do that. That's not why you got booked. You got booked to do the material that got you booked, or that you were funny.
Yeah. And that's not to say that of course comics, the working comics, do new material on paid shows all the time, but the difference is that they know where and how to work on the material in the show.
They know how to finesse it in.
They know how to finesse it in. They know how to open strong, pancake or I guess sandwich the new jokes between two strong bits that you're getting in on a laugh and getting out on a laugh. Those types of things are I really did not. I had such a big ego when I was starting. I still have a huge ego, but less of an ego, slightly less of an ego, and that really struck me is that if someone gives you an opportunity when you're not getting a lot of opportunities, then you got to kill. If you're out on the road, if someone's paying you money to do comedy, you have to kill. There's no,
or at least try to kill. I mean, you're not always going to kill, but you need to be. That's what you need to be going for.
Yeah, and that part of that is something that I think a lot of Dallas comedians have a really good work ethic around their material, and part of it is you have to be comfortable working on the same jokes for a long time to get them real good, to get them where a tight five is actually tight. Those jokes have to be joke. It can't be this open mic fluff that we all do.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. Well, we'll start wrapping up. What's one of your favorite shows that you've done?
Well, speaking of Linda Stogner, her club Backdoor Comedy here in Dallas is fantastic. It's the reason why it's one of the reasons why it's so great is that it's a smaller club, it's a smaller room. Right now, it's only I think 60 people can fit in it. But it feels like a New York club because it's a smaller room and because it's a showcase and it's a weekly showcase. So it's it's a large paid audience for working comedians to come do a show, do work in front of a paid audience. It always has great comics on it. It always has all the shows are always great. The environment is great. So when Backdoor opened its new location, which was in summer of 2019, it was July 4th weekend I think of 2019. Those shows were a room that had a capacity of 60, 80 people packed in there. It's all of the favorites of the show were on all the working comedians from Dallas were all coming in to do spots. It was so hot. The crowd knew that something was exciting, something exciting was happening. And the reason for me, why I did 3 minutes on the show, because she just wanted to throw me up, which was really nice. But I remember that was the first time when you get that crack of laughter, when you get the real one, when you're learning how to surf and you finally surf the big one and you don't fall off, when you don't fall off your board. It was the experience that I think a lot of young comics have where you realize that you have to wait for people to stop laughing.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, to actually like continue your, like, just like I'll always remember that, and I'll specifically always remember that that, you know, as I was coming off, like, you know, like the people were like lined up to like high five. It was like, you know, like the last scene in a Disney movie where like people are like lined up to high five you as you're like walking off stage, and you feel like the popular kid in school. It's what all comics want, is the feeling of like being the popular kid in school, and like coming off stage and everyone's like, "Good game, Trey," and you're like, "Huh," and then you're high fiving everyone, and then you're like, I'm gonna go drink beer tonight. You know, like, you know, like just
Gotta
that.
go celebrate.
I'm gonna go celebrate. I'm gonna go date the hottest girl in school. And I came off stage, and it was like, it really was then of like, oh yeah, I want this every night. Can I? How do I make this happen every night? How do I get paid spots every night? Is like, oh yeah, that's when I realized, like, oh shit, that's when I want to be a working comedian. Like, that's when I want this to be.
That was the moment.
That was really the moment.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, if y'all are ever in Dallas, man, like Backdoor Comedy is I can't speak highly enough about it.
That's fantastic. All right, well, last thing, we have the Art of Bombing playlist. It's the Get Pumped. Doesn't have to be a song that gets you pumped for comedy, just something that gets you pumped up. But what's a song you'd like added to our playlist?
I don't think I've heard it. I've listened to a few episodes of the pod, and I don't think someone has mentioned it. And it is a very well-known song, but "Bad Guy" by Billie Eilish.
I don't know. I don't think that is on the. I don't think that's on the playlist. So
it's such a dumb song that. And it's so weird that I think it gets me really into like the comedy mindset, because it's like she just goes duh like in the middle of the song, and then like has like a funky dance beat, and I'm like, you know, that's all comedy is like just us going like huh, duh, and then like do 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 do, you know.
Such a great comparison. Well, this has been fantastic. Where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me on my website, jack-freeman.com, and then also like Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, at Jack_has_hair.
Jack has hair.
Jack has hair.
All right. Yes. Good for you. I don't. I'm going to change mine to Dan doesn't have hair.
Yeah. Sorry for dunking on you with my with my handles.
Way to do that right at the end. This has been great. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you for listening to the Art of Bombing podcast, hosted and produced by Dan Bublitz Jr. and Josh Shirley for Blitz Entertainment. Nobody Had a Podcast called The Art of Bombing was written and performed by John Holt. The stand-up soundbite bumper was provided by Joe Nicola Music. Be sure to follow and subscribe to The Art of Bombing wherever you get podcasts. You can connect with us on the web at artofbombingpod.com or on all social media platforms at Art of Bombing Pod.